This show is sponsored by Pro-Life New Zealand. Hi, welcome to the Pro-Life Guy. In this episode we're going to be asking the question, does being in a womb change the nature of what you are and what human rights you're entitled to? If I was to say to you, do you think it's ethically acceptable to kill a newborn infant? I think most people would say, well, no, it's not acceptable at all. But what if I then said, well, if it's not acceptable to kill a newborn infant, why is it okay to kill a child before they are born? What is the difference here? Some people try and argue that it's okay to abort children in the womb because they are in a womb. Effectively, what they're trying to suggest here is that their location somehow has a bearing on either what they are as an entity or what human rights they should be or shouldn't be entitled to. Now, obviously, if you are living in a womb, you aren't going to be exercising things like the right to freedom of association or the right to freedom of expression or any of those other human rights because of the fact that you just are incapable of doing that. However, your fundamental human right is another issue altogether. The fundamental human right is the right to life. The reason it is called the fundamental human right is because without life, you cannot experience any other human rights. You depend on the right to life, you depend on life itself in order to be able to exercise things like freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of association, etc. So that is why the right to life is the most fundamental human right of all. So the question then is, does being in a womb mean that you are not entitled to the fundamental human right to life? And some people, crazily enough, try and argue that that is the case. By doing that, effectively what they're suggesting is that your location somehow has a bearing on either what you are or what human rights that you are entitled to. But stop and think about this for a minute, because this is a really terrible position to adopt when you really give it some proper thought. Imagine if I said to you, well, I used to reside in California, now I reside in Tennessee. Do I have the right to freedom of association? And did I have the right to freedom of association before when I was in California as well? Now most people would say, well, yes, of course you had the right to freedom of association in California, and yes, of course you have the right to freedom of association now that you're in Tennessee too. But what if I said to you, well, I'm actually an orange, and when I was in California I was on an orange orchard, and now that I'm in Tennessee I'm sitting in a supermarket waiting to be purchased. You see, the point I'm driving at here is that your location cannot tell us what you actually are. All your location can tell us is where you happen to be right now. But let's say this time I say to you, okay, well, I'm definitely a human person. I'm not something non-human. I'm a human being, and I was residing in California, and now I reside in Tennessee. Do I have the right to freedom of association, and did I have it when I was in Tennessee? Now, of course, you're probably going to say, well, of course you do. You know, that's a human right. It's you're free to associate with who you want to. Government should respect that, and it doesn't matter whether you're in Tennessee or California. But what if I said to you, well, I'm actually a prisoner who was found guilty of murder and I was in jail. I was in prison in California and they moved me to a different prison in Tennessee and I am still serving my prison sentence there. Well, of course I don't have the right to freedom of association because I am not an innocent human being. I have committed a crime, and because of that, certain human rights of mine are curtailed because of what I've done. So once again, my location does not tell you what sort of human rights I should or shouldn't be entitled to. So if your location can't tell us what you are or what human rights you're entitled to when it comes to issues outside of the womb, why do we think that we can use it when a child is developing inside a womb to try and justify abortion? Now, some people are a bit more nuanced in the position they adopt, and they say, well, it's not just about the location that you're in that's different. It's about the fact that the nature of the location and the relationship you have with your mother is quite different. When you're in a womb, you can't go anywhere else. No other adult can step in and help. You can't be adopted out when you're in a womb. You have to be born first. No one else can step up and help you, okay, or assist your mother in that situation with your care. So what people are trying to argue now is that because someone can't assist in the care of you, it's only down to that one person who has you inside their womb, then it is okay to treat you differently because of that fact. And it's okay if we don't respect the fundamental human right, the right to life. But let's imagine a scenario outside the womb where this same reasoning could be used to disastrous effect. Imagine a scenario like this. A couple with a young infant decide that they are going to take up a special conservation job on a remote Antarctic island. The island is too small for large planes, which have long range, to land. so large planes can't reach the island. The island is too far away from any sort of main centre for a small plane to have enough fuel to get there and land. So the only way on and off the island is by boat. But the water around the island turns to ice for most of the year, and there's only a 2 or 3 month window where you can actually bring a boat to and from the island. So what this means is that by agreeing to take on this posting, this couple know that they have to be on this island for at least 10 months. So they go to the island and things go smoothly for the first couple of weeks. But then, all of a sudden, the husband has an accident and dies on the island. The mother, who is now on her own, is no longer able to do the conservation work that she really wanted to do. And not only that, but she has to care full time for that child, that young infant child of theirs, with no help or support. There's no one around to give the baby to or to help her in that role. Would it be acceptable for her to smother or to poison that child because of the fact that she can't get someone else to help her in that position? Most sane and ethically good people are going to say, well, of course it's not okay to kill that child just because you can't get someone else to help you in that situation. So if that's true outside of the womb, why is it not also true when a child is inside the womb? If you can't hand a child off to someone else while it's in a womb for 9 months, then why is it okay all of a sudden to end its life if it's not okay to do the exact same thing outside of a womb? This argument about location is a really, really bad argument because a womb doesn't tell us what you are or what human rights you should be entitled to. All it does is simply tell us where you happen to be right now. You are residing inside a womb. And you are in a very vulnerable position because of that. And I believe in many ways as human persons we have an obligation to ensure that in your state of vulnerability we don't take advantage of that while you are in this voiceless and weak situation to deny you your fundamental human rights, because as a society, if we do that, we are doing something terribly unjust. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time on The Pro-Life Guy. This show is sponsored by Pro-Life New Zealand.